Good morning everybody, and happy Friday to you all. How are you all doing? Our first week of our version, the UK version of lockdown. How are you all feeling? I'm just going to wait a few minutes because I know there are quite a few people that want to join. So greetings from very, very sunny East London. It's kind of strange and quiet and eerie around here. I'm sure it is where you are. Hi Jan, how are you doing? How are things over there in the Netherlands? Hi Paula, great that you could join. Hope you're doing okay. And Stephen, hi Steve, hi, how are you doing? Good to see you. So quite a few people joining. Tell me, how are things where you are? Are people observing the social distancing rules, or are people out enjoying the sunshine? Or a little bit of both. I went for my daily exercise this morning. I went for a run, and it's quite interesting. I was saying to somebody yesterday, actually, as a woman, if you're walking on your own, particularly in the darkness at night, sometimes if you see someone looking a little bit dodgy, you kind of think, is it socially acceptable to cross the road and avoid them? You kind of don't want to offend anybody, and now we're all doing it. It's perfectly socially acceptable to walk off step off the pavement or even cross the road when you see somebody else coming. So I'm still getting used to that. I don't know about you guys. Morning or afternoon, I should say, Roger. Thanks for joining. So hope you guys are all okay. I'm interested to know how you're feeling. I know that some of you are homeschooling your children, so I hope that is going well. And also particularly, how are your businesses and how have they been impacted? So let me know in the comments. Today is all about cash. I don't need to tell any of you that in these uncertain times, cash really is king. And I'm going to talk a bit about managing cash flow, and also in our business and also in our personal lives, but also about the various government schemes that are out there in the UK to help people. There is a lot to get through, so please make sure you have a pen and paper and maybe even a cup of tea. As you'll notice, I am sitting down. I've got a few notes because I want to give you the correct information. But before I get into the cash, morning Rosie, or afternoon. I'm still in the morning, obviously. Good afternoon, how are we? So before we get into the cash, and I will get into that in a second, I'm very conscious that we're all dealing with this in different ways. Some people are feeling positive and optimistic and upbeat. Other people are really worried. There are still people that are in denial, people that are feeling kind of very low and anxious. Also quite a few people that are angry and are kind of looking around for people to blame. So I just want to sort of reiterate what I've been saying in the last couple of weeks, which is we are all dealing with this in our own ways. So be conscious of how you're dealing with it. Try not to make decisions when you're not in good form, but also when you're dealing with other people, let's just have a little bit of kindness and compassion for other people. We don't really know what's happening in their lives and what pressures they're under. So I'm going to continue to remind you, please, to focus on looking after yourself. It's not a selfish thing. It really is essential, especially as business owners. You really can't look after anybody else unless you make sure that you are okay. If you need any practical tips on staying safe and healthy, both mentally and physically, I will point you at my live that I did 1 week ago, last Friday. And just so you know, also I post all of these videos onto my YouTube channel. You just search for Lisa Zevi and you'll find my YouTube channel. So any of the lives there, if you've missed any of them, as I say, last week particularly important in terms of some really practical tips that you can take to keep yourself well, both mentally and physically. So I do want to talk about something that I mentioned briefly last week, and that is a kind of a tip or an idea, I suppose, which is really important in terms of helping you keep calm, which is all around controlling the controllables, so controlling what you can control. So let's have a look at what we can't control at the moment. We can't control if other people follow the rules. I don't know about you, but I get really irritated if I see people kind of walking too close, or when I'm out running and, you know, people don't even have the courtesy to kind of give me a little bit of space. I'm kind of squeezed up against the fence or the wall or whatever. So we can't control whether other people follow the rules, we can't control their actions, and we can't really predict what will happen with this virus, with the economy, with jobs, with our businesses. We can't really predict what will happen. We can't control other people's motives. We don't understand, as I mentioned earlier on, what people are going through. We can't control how other people will react. We certainly can't control how long this is all going to go on for. We can't control what is in the shops. We can't control the amount of potatoes, toilet paper, eggs, hand sanitizer, or whatever else we may be looking for. We can't control any of those things, and so my top tip really for keeping calm, and I'm not saying it's easy, but it's really to just let those things go, because we can't control them. There's absolutely no point in stressing about them. There are things that we can control, really, and I would encourage you to focus on these, and that will help you stay calmer and feel more in control. We can all control our attitude. We can all control how positive we are and the thoughts that we have in our head. We absolutely can control those. We can also control how much information we consume. There's so much information out there, and we can control where we get the information from. So you're choosing to tune in and listen to me, give you some information today, and I thank you for that. But if you find yourself getting anxious, I say to people, turn off the phone. You know, put the phone down, turn off the news, turn off the TV, and make sure, if you do want information, make sure you're getting it from reliable sources. There's lots and lots of information out there, so make sure that you're getting your information from government sources, public health websites, etc., and make sure that you're consuming the news that you want to be consuming, and not kind of obsessing and catastrophizing. We can control what we spend our time doing. We can control whether or not we choose to spend time doing fun or creative things. We can choose what we do within our house and with our immediate families that we're living with. So we absolutely can control that. We can control the amount of social media that we're consuming, back to my earlier point about information and news. We can control whether we each individually are following the public health recommendations. We can control how often we're washing our hands, whether we're touching our face. I've become very conscious of how much I touch my face, so I'm trying to do that with the back of my hand, and washing my hand very regularly. And you can control how often you how much you choose to follow the recommendations, including social distancing, when you do go out, for those very few reasons that the government have laid out, that we may leave our homes as little as possible, but we can control our own social distancing measures that we're taking. And lastly, and maybe most importantly, we can control whether we are being kind and compassionate to others. So we really can control a number of different things. And if you find yourself feeling anxious or angry or a bit out of control, focus on those things that you can control, rather than obsessing about all those many things that we just can't control at the moment. So Jan is saying, block one time slot in a day and focus on one or two sources, otherwise there's too much clutter. I completely agree. We are having, Jan, in the UK here, we're having government officials or the Prime Minister give a press conference around about 5 o'clock every day, and that's generally where I'm getting my updates from. I'm watching that, and that's pretty much it. So I think wherever you're getting your information from, whether it's a website or whether it's the TV, I think you're right. I know a lot of people that are obsessively checking the numbers. My husband in the next room is one of them. That's his choice. I'm choosing not to do that. So I think we all have choices about how we consume the information and what we spend our time on ultimately. So now on to the main event, and that is cash. So it's clearly always an important topic for any business owner, for any person really, but it's never more so than now. Cash is really a really important thing in all of our lives at the moment, and so that's why I wanted to do this live today and just give you my thoughts around managing cash, but also, as I mentioned, some of the government schemes that are out there to help us all manage through these difficult times. I have spoken on several occasions about the importance of knowing your numbers. I meet so many business owners who leave all of the financial aspects of their business to their accountants. And I really don't think that's a good idea, even at the best of times. But right now, it's absolutely dangerous, in my opinion. And I'll tell you for why. Your accountant's job is ensuring that you are compliant with the law and with HMRC or your local tax authorities' regulations and guidelines. That is your accountant's job. Your accountant is not running your business. They are a great source of information and advice, and I would absolutely advise you to be consulting with them regularly, and especially at the moment. But they are not running your business, and it really is absolutely critical that you know your numbers so that you can make informed decisions. So the most important thing when it comes to managing your cash is a very simple 3 month cash flow forecast. And if you don't already have such a thing, I really would advise you to have one. And what I'm talking about here is a very simple spreadsheet showing what's going to come in and what's going to go out, and along a timeline, along a 3 month period. And because it's crucial to know when that cash is coming in and when the cash needs to go out. A simple spreadsheet with a running total. I'm very happy to provide you with a format. If that would be helpful, please let me know in the comments. But so that you can see the balance, and you can run through and you can see what your running balance is, and effectively when you are going to have to pay out, get money in, and so you make sure you're not going to run out of cash. I'm not an accountant, and so I'm not talking about accounting principles. I'm just talking about cash in the bank and when you're expecting it to come in and go out. Just like my advice on resilience and self-care, you have to start with yourself. And so my advice is to save yourself first before anything else. And that means having a personal, family, if you like, 3 month cash flow forecast first. That is, if you don't have either of these things, I would definitely start there. So add in when your mortgage and bills need to be paid, and also calculate how long any cash is going to last. And that's what this tool or this concept is designed to do. And it is really simple. So if a lot of people don't like looking at numbers, they maybe they weren't very good at maths at school, or they tell themselves they're not very good at numbers. I'm talking about something really simple, and as I say, I'm really happy to help you with a simple template if that would be helpful. But it is really important to know personally when money is coming in and when money is going out, and map that over the next 3 months as a minimum, and have that as a rolling cash forecast. So then at least you know, you either might be happy with the outcome or you might not be, but at least you know, and we're talking about acting on fact here. So start with your personal ones, and I'll go into the different things that you might be able to apply for, and what's going to apply to different groups of people. But once you get your head around those different things and which ones you want to go for, you need to put those numbers in there as well, and just make sure you've got a picture of what the next 3 months looks like in your personal life. So Paula is saying 3 month cash flow spreadsheet. Yes, please. Absolutely. I will post that in the group after this live. And Roger also, very much like to see your cash flow template. Okay, very happy to provide that to you. On the proviso that I am not an accountant, I'm just going to share with you the cash flow template that I use personally and also in my business. So for your business cash flow forecast, it's a similar thing. So when do you expect to receive any money in from customers? But also, are you going to be applying to the government for any of the various different schemes which I'm about to come into, or your bank? Maybe you're going to apply for a short-term loan, and we'll talk about these in a moment. And so then when would you expect these things to come in, and when are you going to expect to have to pay salaries, suppliers, rents, etc.? So it's a very simple, and it's ballpark figures. It doesn't necessarily, we're not talking down to the penny here. We are talking about where are you with your numbers, and what are the major movers, and therefore what does your cash position look like? Every time I speak about cash or managing your numbers or knowing your numbers, I always talk about 3 key numbers. And in very broad terms, what I'm talking about is, what do you need personally in your family to keep food on the table, to keep the lights on, to keep paying the bills, the mortgage, etc. What is that number? And if you don't know it, please calculate it so you know a rough number. What is that number that you need each month? The same for your business. What do you need in your business to keep the lights on, to keep things ticking over, to keep things going? And therefore, assuming you're paying yourself out of your business and you don't have any other sources of income, which may apply to some and not to others, but assuming that your business is funding your life, which it will be for many of you, what revenue therefore do you need in your business? Now, I'm very aware that many of you will have very reduced revenue, and actually some will have no revenue at all. So this is where the runway concept is really, really important. And by that, I simply mean, how long is your cash, either your personal cash or your business cash, going to last you? And again, when you do this exercise, you might get a pleasant surprise or you might get a horrible shock, but really it is always better to know where you are, and then you can take action. You can act on fact rather than supposing and catastrophizing, or just sticking your head in the sand, which so many people do about their numbers. Please, please, please don't do that. If you need help, please do reach out. So we are all in this together, and I know that many people are struggling, but do think carefully. You are business owners, and so you do need to think really carefully about any credit or extended payment terms you offer to others, because that may put you and your business and your family, it may put you at risk in terms of your ability to pay your staff, your people, or your bills. So I would really say think carefully about this. Roger, for example, I know that you're very focused on cash collection at the moment, and I know that you're a very kind-hearted man, but I think it is really important to keep disciplined in your cash collection, and for all of us to be getting in contact with people that owe us money and putting in place payment plans, or finding out when people are intending to pay. There is a lot of support in this country for various different groups, and I'm going to run through that in a second. And so if anybody is coming to you as a sort of a first resort to ask you if you can delay collection or give them a bit of a payment holiday, I would really encourage you to encourage them to explore the government support, the government's schemes and the local authority schemes before they start using you as effectively a lender or a credit provider. Maybe that sounds harsh, but as I say, we are all in business, and I'm here to advise you mainly from a business perspective. And so I would really encourage you to have your commercial hat on. I don't mean at the expense of having a basic human compassion, but we are business people and we do need to keep that cash flowing. So I know that many of you in this group, or several of you in this group I should say, are in the property sector, and so I wanted to just say a few words about any of you that have rental properties. I know that many of you, and we're in that situation as well, many of you will be worried about people stopping paying their rents. Our agents that manage our properties have been really excellent so far. They've been writing to our tenants and advising them that if they're struggling to make ends meet, they should be applying for the local and national government assistance that is in place before approaching their landlords. Mortgage holidays, and I'm going to say a bit more about that in a second, but mortgage holidays are mortgage holidays. They're not a break on your mortgage, they're just deferring the payments out. So they're holidays and not deferments. And so the best you might be able to offer your tenants is also a deferment. But again, I would strongly advise you that you ask your tenants, or ask your agents to ask your tenants, to explore the various avenues of support provided by the authorities before you give them any kind of deferment, because this thing is just going to spiral otherwise. And I do understand that a lot of people find themselves in difficult positions, and we do need to be compassionate. But again, you're still going to have to pay your mortgage, so think about that. Evictions have been suspended, it's true, and a lot of people have been getting in touch with me about that, but rent is still due, and the courts will enforce this in due course. So where people are able to keep paying, we should encourage them to do that, just like we should keep paying. Otherwise, we're just shoring up huge problems coming down the line. So talking about mortgage holidays, Again, I'm not an accountant, but usually the advice that most people will receive from financial advisors or accountants is to pay down your mortgage actually if you can. However, if you are worried about your cash position, a mortgage holiday might be a sensible thing to explore as a way of conserving your cash over the next few months. It is really obviously up to you completely what is your own personal situation, what's going to be right for you. You obviously must do what's right for you and your family, but that there is that option available. The holidays are applicable to both residential and buy-to-let mortgages. But don't forget, you are still going to have to make those payments, and interest will be accruing on your mortgages during that holiday. So you have to weigh that up given your own personal situation. Roger is saying, I'm learning that discipline is kinder than compassion after all. There's no point in being kind to the extent that you put yourself and your family at risk. This is all about a balanced perspective. So I think we all have to make our own judgments, but just everything grinding to a halt is not a good idea. Many things are grinding to a halt, but I think as much as possible, we need to keep the cash flowing, so we need to be paying our bills and we need to be asking people to pay us. That's my position anyway. Okay, so now we get on to the various government support schemes, and these are UK focused, although I know that in many other countries governments are also stepping up to provide support. So even if you're not based in the UK, this might be interesting for you to understand what our government is doing. I am not a legal or a financial expert. I do need to say that. This information that I'm sharing with you is based on what I have read and discussed with several accountants that I work with, and is generally my own opinion or advice that I have received. But I do need to caveat that with, you do need to take your own advice. I am sharing my interpretation and accountants that I've spoken to, their interpretation of the rules and regulations. I welcome your comments or your questions and anything that you might have heard from professionals that you're working with. Rosie saying, don't set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm. I love that. Ultimately, I mean, I'm a scuba diver, as many of you will know, and one of the mantras in scuba diving is save yourself first. Just like it is, they always reiterate it on the airline healthy safety advice. Put your own oxygen mask on before helping others, and it's exactly the same. It's no different as business owners. We cannot help people in our community, even our family, our team members, our suppliers, our businesses. We cannot help anybody unless we're okay, and that does mean mentally, physically, and today we're talking about financially, so completely agree. Hi Nikki, thank you for joining. I'm so sorry to interrupt your homeschooling schedule, but thank you very much for joining, and hope you guys are well. Okay, so the first thing I am going to mention, I'm going to run through various different things, and the first thing I'm going to mention is just a few personal items that the government has done to help us all personally. The first one is that any tax payments, so payments on account that you might be making for your personal tax in July, so they come up in January and July each year, the July payment is deferred till January 2021. You don't need to apply, you don't need to do anything, you can just not pay it this July. I would remind you that you will have to pay it in January. If you're late with January's return, the one that you should have done by January 2020, if you haven't put that in yet, you have 4 weeks from yesterday, from when the Chancellor announced it yesterday, so you have 4 weeks now to get that in, and I definitely would advise you to get that in. The government has increased universal credit, working tax credit and housing benefits. These are complex systems and processes, and this will be different for each person, but just to make you aware that those benefits, universal credit, working tax credits and housing benefits, have all been increased and loosened and adjusted, so please check on the government website or call the special benefits hotline. Okay, now I'm going to come on to a subject that I think many of you will be very interested in, and that is the subject of self-employment. So the Chancellor made a big announcement yesterday. New measures were announced last night, And I didn't hear him clearly say it. So one of my questions was, and something that I've spent quite a bit of time this morning speaking to various accountants and also doing my own research, I wanted to clear up some confusion, and this is based on my understanding, and this has been confirmed now by several professionals to me. The definition of self-employed, what does that actually mean? So self-employed people are not paid through PAYE, and they don't have the same obligations as a company director. So self-employed is where you are receiving money for your services, but not through a limited company. You're filling out a tax return each year and you're saying, this is how much I've earned, and this is how much, these are my expenses. Limited company contractors are specifically included. In fact, limited company directors are specifically included. So that means that individuals who provide professional services through their own limited companies cannot access the scheme. I'm going to quote directly now from the government website. Those who pay themselves a salary and dividends through their own company are not covered by the scheme, but will be covered by for their salary by the Coronavirus Job Retention Scheme if they operate PAYE schemes. I'm going to come on to that scheme that he's referring to there, but the crucial point is that company directors are legally responsible for running their companies and ensuring reporting is correct. They are actually classified as office holders by HMRC. They are not, I should say, because that includes me, we are not self-employed. We're effectively employees paid through PAYE. So you need to check with your accountant, but I think the vast majority of us in this group, this is going to apply to us. And what that actually means in really stark terms is that other than mortgage holidays, which I've mentioned, and deferred tax payments, which I've also mentioned, there is no support for company directors. Unless you operate separate commercial premises, and I will come on to that a little bit later in this live, but if you're a limited company with no premises, or you've newly set up your limited company in the last year, there is no support at all apart from those things that I've just mentioned. As a reminder, and slightly to stop depressing all of you, for some of you, the proposed new IR35 measures that were going to come into force in the last budget have been deferred by 12 months. So that's a slightly good piece of news for some of you, but generally speaking, for those of us that are company directors and pay ourselves through PAYE plus dividends, there is no we cannot access this scheme. I will come on to my thoughts about the salaried side of things in a moment, but that is the situation as I understand it. Okay. So if you are self-employed, because not all of you will be working through a limited company, the scheme in the UK here is that the government or HMRC will look at taking or paying you 80% of your average taxable monthly profit. So that's how much you made minus your expenses, so whatever profit you declared over the last 3 years. They will look to pay you 80% of that for a 3-month period. So if you have 1, 2 or 3 years of tax returns and you're self-employed, then this will apply to you. And the crucial year is the year that ended April last year, 2019. So that tax return that hopefully you put in by January of this year, but it was actually for April of last year. So April 18 to April 19. That is the crucial one that you need. If you have 3, they will take the last 3. If you only have 1, they will take that 1. If you only became self-employed since last April, this is not going to apply to you. And as far as I can see, there is no support for you at all, apart from the kind of personal measures that I mentioned earlier on. So in order to qualify for this, you need to have made average trading profits of less than 50k per year. If you went over that limit, then you will not be eligible. And you must have earned the majority of your income, i.e. more than 50% through self-employment. So some people have got a job and they're self-employed. So as long as 50% of your earnings are through the self-employment route, then you will qualify for this. And as I say, you must have filed a tax return for the 18-19 tax year. And if you're late, I repeat what I said earlier on, you do now have 4 weeks to get that in and access this scheme. If you weren't self-employed as at April 19, the picture's really unclear, but there doesn't seem to be any support. And so the same as new business owners through limited companies as well, it's the same picture there. In order to access this scheme, you don't need to do anything. HMRC will contact you, and payments are likely to happen in June for the 3-month period that started basically 1st of March. So March, April, May, and they will pay you a 3-month lump sum in June. That will be equivalent to 80% of the average of your last 3 years' taxable monthly profits. So, now I'm going to speak about the job retention scheme, and then I'm going to talk about the the job retention scheme, and this is then what might apply to company directors, although from what I've read it's still unclear whether company directors can actually apply this to themselves. And the crucial reason is that the job retention scheme is set up to enable you to keep on workers that you would otherwise have to lay off or make redundant. And the crucial point is that you need to put them into a new status, a new kind of category that's been created that's called furlough. And basically what that means is that they can't work if they are classified as furlough. And so there's a bit of confusion over whether company directors can actually furlough themselves, because you're still supposed to be running your businesses. And so whether or not you can just down tools completely for 3 months and therefore get 80% of your salary that you've been paying yourself, that is still a bit up in the air, but basically means you cannot do any work whatsoever for your company, which I think is a pretty unlikely scenario for most of the business owners that I know, including myself. So this job retention scheme then is set up to reimburse 80% of the wages for people that you decide to furlough, and that's up to a maximum of £2,500 per worker per month for an initial phase of 3 months. So like the self-employed, they've been trying to match these two things as much as possible, and this applies to all employers, large or small. So it's a reimbursement scheme, so you will need to pay it and then claim it back. So I refer you to my earlier comments about having enough cash to do that. You can obviously choose to top up the remaining 20%, that's entirely at your discretion. And your employees that you are furloughing may also be eligible for other support like universal credit. As I mentioned, furloughing, if that's even a word, is a newly created status, and it does actually represent a change in employment status. So just a warning, employment law and employment contract therefore absolutely apply. And so you might need to take advice. There's some great information on the Citizens Advice website that you might want to check out. This applies to anybody that was employed as at the 1st of February. The guidance says that you need to be fair in how you choose people, and so the recommendation is that you start with people who cannot work from home or need to work from home, for example, to care for children. You will need to advise people in writing, and depending on the contract of employment that your team member has, you may need to get consent from your employee, so make sure you get the right advice. And I will repeat, they cannot still work for you. So you need to be really very conscious and intentional in this decision that you make, because once you've furloughed someone, you can't then ask them to do any work for you. It's unclear whether or not you can switch this on or off, so whether or not you can furlough someone and then invite them back and then furlough them again, that's still unclear. But furloughing is basically an inactive status, so they are at home, self-isolating, social distancing in the way that we all are, and not doing any work for you. So the way that you access this, it will be through a new portal that is not yet live, and employers will need to enter the detail of their furloughed workers to be able to claim back the money. As I mentioned, you will need to pay it and then claim back. It's unclear yet whether or not you are able to defer salary payments. the advice at the moment is that you can't defer salary payments. You do need to meet payroll for the end of March and the end of April and going forward. The payments under this scheme are expected to start towards the end of April, and so I'm going to come on to the provisions to maybe help you with cash flow to get you through to that point. You're probably going to need to provide bank statements and pay slips to prove that you did actually make the payments. I know it's a really, really difficult decision to keep somebody or to let them go, and you will all need to make your own decisions, but it's really difficult. I think from a purely commercial perspective, you need to think about future recruitment costs, and you also need to look at your team, and it probably does make sense to keep on certainly higher salaried people but put them on furlough measures, which means at least they're getting something, rather than letting them go and then having to hire people back and incurring those recruitment costs. But again, it really difficult decision, and you'll need to look at your own cash position and decide what you're going to do. I would say please make sure that you check out all of these different schemes that I'm talking about today before you make any decisions about whether to lay anybody off. It's obviously a big decision, both personally and also from a commercial perspective. So there are other business support measures in place. I was just reading a couple of the comments. Jan is reflecting on the cost management side of things. It's also about finding other ways of generating cash. Yes, and actually that is something that we are going to be looking at our event next week. So our regular community event will be online next week. I hope that you can join us. It's on Tuesday at 10 o'clock in the morning, and we will be looking at exactly that. What can you pivot? How can you get different cash in? What are there additional products or services that you can offer your customers? So definitely, cash is king, which is what we're talking about today. Definitely. Okay. Other business support measures then. So there are grants that are available for very small businesses if you are trading from a commercial property. So I mentioned earlier on that if you don't have separate premises, that there's and you're a company director, there is very little support available for you. But if you do have commercial premises like an office or a retail outlet, a shop, a factory, etc., and if you're eligible for small business rate relief or rural rate relief, then these grants will apply to you. And again, there's no need to apply for these. Your local authority will know that you're eligible and will get in touch with you. I understand that the grants will be up to 10k, so not needing to be repaid cash to you, for businesses like shops, cafes, restaurants, bars, theatres, and also interesting self-catering accommodation. So those people that offer kind of B&B, not B&B because that's breakfast, but self-catering accommodation. There is also quite a lot of business rate relief for companies in the worst hit areas. So, for example, leisure, hospitality, or retail, and these grants, as I mentioned, and the business rate relief will be applied automatically by your local authorities, and they know who you are. A short word on insurance. I would say definitely check the small print to see if you can claim. Some businesses have insurance that will cover them, and some don't, so definitely check that out. The government has confirmed that the advice that they've given to businesses and also to individuals to stay at home does constitute enough of a barrier, if you like, beyond which insurance companies need to claim if that is covered in your policy. Also, I would say back to the premises point, if you do have premises which are now empty, check that your insurance is still covering you, because many insurances have a clause in there about empty properties. So definitely check that out. So another a great measure that the government has made that will affect all VAT registered businesses So no VAT payments need to be made until mid-June is the current advice. And again, you don't need to do anything, you just don't need to pay. Unfortunately, I just paid my my VAT bill in the first week of March, so unfortunately that money has already gone out. But don't forget to cancel your direct debit if you aren't going to make a payment, and then obviously you'll have to reinstate it once things start picking up again. Those deferred VAT payments will be due by April 2021. So with many of these things, they are designed to help us through these tough weeks and months ahead. But just like the mortgage holidays, the VAT will need to be paid. And so bear that in mind before when you're considering whether you're going to apply for these things. The government has also indicated that it will look at giving businesses more time to pay other taxes, including corporation tax. So the best thing to do is get in touch with HMRC if you are wanting to negotiate more time to pay. The government have indicated that they will be open and looking to be flexible and supportive for this. So also another thing for businesses that have employees, fewer than 250 employees, the government will now cover blanket 14 days of statutory sick pay, which will be covered by the government. And that is being suggested as another thing that company directors could potentially apply for, is that 14 days of statutory sick pay, particularly if you do have to self-isolate. Then let's move on now to the loan scheme. So this is called the Coronavirus Business Interruption Loan Scheme, CBILS, when we needed another new acronym. So this is for businesses with a turnover of up to £40 million, and it's a 12-month interest-free loan. It was originally announced as a 6-month interest-free loan, but that has been put up to 12 months. The crucial point here is you need to make a proposal that would otherwise be considered viable if it wasn't for coronavirus. So you can't just go to your bank and go, can I have 20 grand, please? It has to be a proposal that under normal circumstances they would find compelling. You can get a lot more information on this at britishbusinessbank.co.uk, so that's british-business-bank.co.uk. I have heard quite a few stories now about some banks asking for personal guarantees. I think it is a moving picture. The first step is definitely to approach your lender, and if they are insisting on a personal guarantee, I'd make a bit of a fuss. I know a lot of people are making a fuss, and pressure is coming on some banks. I think it was yesterday that Barclays sort of backed down and removed that provision, but I know that some banks are still insisting on that, which is going to make that a really difficult decision for a lot of business owners out there, with the picture so uncertain. Given the government is guaranteeing 80% of the loan, it seems a little bit harsh to ask people to put their homes on the line. But anyway, as I say, that's a moving picture, and I'll update you if I get any more information on that. These loans, I would suggest, could be really useful to cover those wages until that money gets paid in April. So in terms of the job retention scheme, so might be a good idea to think about that as a way to get you through to April, when that money starts coming through to cover your team. If you have an existing loan provision in place, I would definitely say approach your lender and talk about a repayment holiday if that's going to help you. Again, that's a holiday, so you will have to pay it off at some point. So all of these things, as I keep mentioning, they are designed to help us through these difficult times, but we will have to pay most of these things at some point. One point on expenses, which I read during my research, which I think is actually an excellent idea, is to create a new expense category in your accounting system, or ask your accountant to do it for you. A new kind of COVID-19 or coronavirus expenses category, and then classify any expenses that you are incurring that you wouldn't normally be incurring if it wasn't for this crisis, and categorize everything under that. And the reason for doing that is that if the government government decides in the future to offer any further compensation, it will make it really easy to claim. And also it will be good again from your perspective, from a cash flow management perspective, and just knowing your numbers, to get a really accurate sense of what this crisis is costing you. So I know that's lots to take in, and thank you for all of your questions. I hope that you've found that useful. I would absolutely reiterate what Jan said, which is also thinking about other ways that you can generate cash or bring cash in. Entrepreneurs and business owners are usually very creative people, and this is definitely a time to get our creative thinking hats on. I will remind you what I said last week, which is try and be aware of where you are along that change curve. If you're feeling angry or frustrated or panicking or confused, that's not a great time to be making decisions. But if you feel like you've reached a point of acceptance and you're into problem solving, then definitely is the time to be creative. And that is going to be the main theme of next Tuesday's community event, which I really hope you'll be able to attend. So just a few things I wanted to then end up with is please get your information from reliable sources. That's government websites, public health websites. Again, a really good suggestion, I think it was also from you, Jan, was have a time during your day where you choose to get your information, and the rest of the day, let's switch off those notifications and turn off the TV. It's not great from a mental health perspective to just be bombarded by this information all the time. I will say that the incidences of fraud are apparently skyrocketing, so please be careful. If in doubt, the usual precautions: don't click on any links in any emails. Instead, call a number that you know to be correct that you've called before, or visit a government website, HMRC website, where you found the URL from Google, or you've actually typed it into the browser yourself. So be really careful. HMRC will not contact you asking for your bank details or asking you to make a small interim payment and then they're going to repay it back to you. That's not going to happen. If in doubt, call them, not on a number that comes in an email that you're not sure about, or even on a letter that you're not sure about, but go online and find the number to call if you're in any doubt. So please be careful. And I'm sure you're all looking out for elderly friends and relatives, but they are particularly susceptible to fraud, unfortunately. It's an absolutely terrible thing, but it is unfortunately part of the downside of this. I think generally speaking, we're seeing just the best qualities in most people. We're seeing compassion and kindness and community spirit and all of those wonderful things, but we are also in a few cases seeing kind of the worst examples of humanity as well. I really hope that was helpful. As I say, please keep your questions coming in and let me know how I can support you. Paula, I wanted to respond to a question that you asked about earlier on. You asked about trading. And I know that Daniela answered as well, and I'm not sure if she's on today, but what I would say is my husband is a very experienced self-taught trader, and he is trading at the moment. I asked him what his advice would be, following on from your question this morning, and what his advice would be to anyone that was looking at trading at the moment. And he's a very cautious person, and his advice was even more than usual. The advice is always, when you're trading, be prepared to risk the money, be prepared to lose the money. It's a risky business at the best of time. Volatility is absolutely off the scale. He got very excited showing me a graph yesterday for the last few years, even during 2008, and the volatility indexes are just off the scale. So there is money to be made, but you cannot be using any money that you cannot afford to lose, because it's really high risk at the moment. If you do want to, if you are considering doing that, and as I say, he is sitting next door doing that, he is looking at the sectors that are busy now, but also so those sectors that don't require face-to-face contact, but also those that will be needed during the recovery period that will come. So he is looking at things like payment providers, cloud companies, and mobile service providers are the sectors that he told me that he was specifically looking at investing in. If you could let me know in the comments, or I might post separately, I'm very happy to hold a special session with him. As I say, he's a self-taught but very experienced trader. Very happy to have a special Q&A with him, if that would be helpful for some of you. So let me know in the comments if you'd be interested, and I will set that up. We'll do it as a live where I can kind of interview him and ask him your questions, and he can answer those, if that would be interesting for any of you. So that is all. That is everything from me today. I really hope that was helpful and useful for you. Please do join us on our online community event next Tuesday, 10 till 12. We will be exploring strategies to survive and thrive, so looking at the pivoting, the getting more cash into your business, and also taking advantage of the opportunities that there certainly are around us. So that is very much the theme of next week's community event, an online event. Please register via the Zoom link that I have put in. I will post it again probably this afternoon. So register yourself onto that so that you can receive those details. Paul is saying that's great to answer trader question, always interested to hear more, thank you. Okay, brilliant. So in the meantime, before next week, where I hope you'll join me on Tuesday for our online community event, in the meantime, let's do keep in touch, keep posting your questions, let's support each other as well. Obviously I'm trying to support you guys here, but there are many great people in this community, and we can support each other. Also let me know what you need, what future topics would be useful that you would like me to cover. How can I best serve you and provide you with value? What are the kind of burning questions that you have around business, either survival or thriving, around managing any aspect of your business? I was thinking of doing something around managing people remotely, so let me know if that would be helpful for you guys. And if you want to talk, you know where I am. Please don't suffer in silence. Please get in touch, and we'll organise a call. We're all in this together, and I want to support you as much as possible. So please stay safe, look after yourselves, and also keep in touch, and have a great weekend, and I'll speak to you next week. Take care. Bye for now.